Hello, Lovey. I'm so glad you're joining me on another episode of the ODAT Chat podcast. If you are joining me for the first time, my name is Arlina and I'll be your host. And guess what? I'm finally in Idaho in my new studio and I'm super excited to be here and record lots more interviews for you. So, today's episode is a step work call. My guest is Laura and she's on step 1. But real quick before I forget, if you find this to be helpful, I really hope you share it with all your friends. I think these are going to be really good episodes. And if you're feeling extra generous and you want to support the podcast, please visit odatchat.com. You'll find a donate button on the right. You know what else you're going to find on the website is links to tons more interviews. I think we're up to about 80, something like that. So lots more interviews on the website. So don't forget to visit that. I have all kinds of other resources on there too. So just FYI. So listen, that's it. Please enjoy this episode with Laura. Well, Laura, thank you so much for joining me on the ODAT Chat podcast.
Thank you, Arlina, for having me.
Yes. So you are one of the few brave souls who volunteered to do the step work calls. So we're on step 1. Yay. And before we really jump into it, I'd like to open with a little prayer just to invite God in so that, because at the end of the day, that's kind of where my head is at, is let God do his job and we'll see what happens. Okay. Dear Father, thank you so much for Laura. I'm so grateful for her willingness to do this self-examination process. And I just pray that you guide our hearts and our minds, that we might have any insights that we need to discover the truth and that'll lead us to healing. So thank you very much. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. So how was your step 1 homework?
It was good.
Had you ever done it out of the woman's way before?
Yes, I have.
Did.
So it was a good review and I added some stuff and I think it's always good to look at this. I've done step 1, step 2, step 3, and part of step 4. And it's been a while. So I think the review is definitely helpful.
Awesome. So where are you in your sobriety journey? Like, have you been sober for a period of time?
Today is day 70.
Okay.
I first started trying back in 2017, about 2 years ago. I had like over 90 days sober and then I had a relapse. And then the following summer I had like 123 days and then I had a relapse. And so I found after the relapses, I get into the cycle where it's the daily drinking again and I'm going to stop and I'm going to stop. And then I just can't. So, so I think this time I'm finally done. I feel like I'm finally done with it. So it's day 70 and going on forever.
Okay. And are you doing a 12-step program or any kind of like Smart Recovery or Celebrate Recovery or anything like that?
Not currently. I do have, most of my longer periods of sobriety have been over the summertime. And by me, they have noon meetings every day that I like to go to. But when I work, I'm a teacher, so I work during the school year. So besides those meetings, I haven't been to other meetings.
Okay, but you are going to a 12-step meeting?
Not currently, but I have in the past.
Oh, okay. What are the meetings that you're going to?
AA.
Oh, okay. I would consider that a 12-step meeting.
Right. I guess the reason why I said no is because I'm not currently going. I've gone in the past.
I see.
They're in the noon meeting. So like when I'm done with work and I'm off for the summer, I'll probably go back, but I haven't been since last summer.
Since last summer. Okay. Do you think during this process while we're doing steps, could I ask you do you think you could go?
After next week, for sure.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We go work and then I'll be way more open.
Got it. Okay. Well, that'll be good. I think it is. I think it's so important to establish some connections with other people who are also on your same journey. And whenever I sponsor someone, usually the first thing I ask them to do is not only go to meetings, but get phone numbers from at least 3 people so that you could do, I call them willingness calls. And a willingness call is when you just, you call someone and you check in with them and you just say, hey, I'm just calling to check in. How are you doing? Here's a little something about what's going on with me. And then you over several weeks, you begin to get really current with people, right? And you can ask them the next time. It's like, oh, so how did your first date turn out? Or how did that difficult conversation with your husband go? Or, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that you start developing. And then meanwhile, you're sharing a little bit about what's going on with you. And what's interesting is over time, like when the shit hits the fan, when it always does, you will be used to talking to a few people so that if one person's not available, you can call the next person and the next person. And you'll already be in the habit of picking up the phone, right? Because that's the worst part is I've been in situations where I haven't done that. And then something happens and I'm like, oh my God, who do I call? And then it's so much harder to, and then you have to explain the whole backstory. If you're current with someone, you can just dive right in and they already know what's going on.
And
So
it's completely different when it's somebody else that's also in a program and is sober. It's totally different than calling, say, a best friend or a sister.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like those people have they have an invested interest in what you decide to do after you share the problem. I think people in recovery get that sometimes the helpful thing is just listening. Like sometimes I just need to vent. Right. So anyway, so if you could do that, so go to meetings and then get 3 phone numbers and then just start your willingness calls. I feel like that will help carry you through the rest of the steps as things come up. So,
okay.
All right, that'll be awesome. Okay. So we're starting with step 1 and we're doing it. So really, I've done a few of these now. So really what I'll try to get to as you share your writings, as you answer the questions, what I'm really trying to get to is the connection between the powerlessness and the unmanageability as it relates to your drinking, right? And of course, how it relates to everything else, because we're powerless over people, places, and things, right? But really what we're trying to just get in touch with is how we're powerless over the drinking and how our lives have become unmanageable. So really the cause and effect, right? What is the cause? It's the drinking. What is the effect? Well, it comes out in a multitude of ways. So you did the readings from the step 1 in the 12 and 12 and the big book. Don't you just love the 12 and 12?
I do. I only looked at chapter 1, but it was an easy, quick, short, nice read.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's super practical. Yeah. And you read Bill's story out of the big book?
I did. That was the second time I've read that, his story. So that was good. I can't say that I relate to him very much. I just have a very different journey than he does.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I can in some ways, certainly, but he was really, really severe. And it's really encouraging that he was able to turn his life around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and what I find a lot of times out of those stories is that maybe the circumstances are different, but the feelings are all the same, right? He talks about like the despair and the sadness.
The desperation of it all. You're in such a desperate place.
Yeah. And was that something that you connected with?
Yeah. Not to the point where I was putting a mattress down because I was worried about becoming suicidal, nothing like that.
Right. Yeah.
But absolutely, to where I didn't know if I could stop.
Right. Which is really scary.
It's a really scary place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, let's see. So, step 1 is about awareness and unmanageability. I'm just reading off of the sheet.
Okay.
Let's see. We need to become conscious of our feelings, our behavior, and their effects on other people and ourselves. I think that is probably the key right there, right? It's our feelings. And then what do we do about our feelings, right? What are the behaviors that we do to try to self-soothe? And then, the effects that it has on other people. So in exercise 1, so it says, let's see, begin on your knees with prayer to your higher power, asking for clarity and direction, then sit and reflect back on over the last few days or months and write down all that you feel powerless over and all that is making your life unmanageable. Include thoughts, feelings, behavior patterns, and actions, and anything else that comes to mind. So do you want to just go ahead and read me what you wrote for step 1?
Yeah, I started with exercise 2.
Okay, well, let's so exercise 2. What are some examples of your behaviors or actions that have come to light that you're feeling powerless over as a result?
So for me, it was blacking out at night, waking up, not being able to remember the night before, not remembering going to bed, not remembering conversations. Also missing work, which didn't happen a whole lot, but it did on some occasions. On the worst days, I would have to call in sick to work. And then there was a couple times, and it was probably like 3 times total in the past 2 years where I was driving to work still feeling buzzed from the night before, and then just not being able to stop. So that's what I wrote for that part of it.
So let me just dig into a couple of these. So you mentioned having conversations with people that you didn't remember. So can you give me an example? Was it a friend or somebody from work?
It was my kids.
Oh,
so like me asking one of my kids a question, and he would be like, we talked about this last night. I mean, how awful is that? And I just would have no recollection of it at all. There was one case, this is horribly embarrassing, where he got in trouble. So I took away his iPad and I hid it. But instead of hiding his iPad, I hid his dad's iPad. So the next day, we were missing an iPad, and we ended up finding it. But how embarrassing is that? So I mean, it's not like when I drank I was out and about. I was home with my family, which makes it kind of so much worse.
Yeah.
But it was those conversations.
Right. So you're married with how many kids?
2 kids.
2 kids. How long have you been married?
Almost 18 years.
Okay. 2 kids. How old are your kids?
16 and 10.
16 and 10. Okay. Okay. So, that's kind of funny.
Is that your kid's age too?
They're very similar. Yeah. Yeah. And I've been married for a long time too.
Great.
Yeah. So, okay. I feel like that little bit of background just kind of helps people sort of relate to, your specific, okay. So you're missing conversations with your kids, and have they responded to giving you feedback about how they feel about your drinking?
The only one that I've really talked to about is my older son. And I opened up to him not too long ago, probably a couple months ago, about, going to AA meetings and just, more or less telling him he needs to be careful because this runs in the family. And, I told him, I said, it's all fun and games, but one day you wake up and it's not fun anymore, and you find yourself in a place where you can't stop. And it's a really awful place to be. So here and there, I've opened up just a little bit like that. Mm-hmm. It's funny though, because when I first started talking to him about it, his initial reaction was, "You don't have a problem," I don't think that they have seen the severity of it. They don't realize that when I just disappear and go to bed, I completely pass out and don't remember. I mean, he knows that I don't remember some stuff, but I just don't think that they really understand the severity of how bad it was.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's a secret? Like you're hiding a secret? Like nobody really knows how bad it is?
Not so much anymore because, I've been on this journey now for a couple of years, and I've opened up to my 2 sisters. I've opened up to my dad. I even opened up to my grandma, who used to be a part of running a 12-step program. So I feel like more
Wow.
and more, I'm way more open about it than I was like 2 years ago.
Okay.
And when I first thought about getting sober, the thought to go into AA would make me cry. I would cry real
Oh,
tears. Um, and
why?
because, well, because when I first wanted to get sober, I opened up to my doctor, who basically was zero help, gave me zero guidance, zero help. The information that he did give me was false.
Oh,
Um, so I just didn't know what to do. I mean, I had been totally honest with him. I didn't know anybody in recovery. And then at some point after that, I found podcasts and I found groups on Facebook, and then started connecting to people and realizing that there are so many people just like me. And then I was able to say, oh, go to a meeting. That's cool. Like it became not a big deal, and
mhm.
it's not a big deal. But at first, when you don't know anybody and you don't know any different, it's just, I guess, feeling like you've got this thing and there's nobody else like you. It's just a scary place to be, and a
It's a
sad place.
very scary place to be. And what helped you? Was it, listening to the podcasts and the Facebook groups and seeing that there were so many people? That's what gave you the courage to go to meetings?
Yeah. Yep. And that
Oh,
it's not a horrible thing. And normal people go to meetings. That's what people do. And it's not,
yeah.
it's not a big deal.
It's not.
It's
Yeah,
not.
it is, but it isn't, and I feel like we find a new normal in those
Mhm.
meetings.
But
And
the
it,
meeting that I go to and I like, I mean, it's really busy, and there's
mhm.
people of all ages. There's a lot of older people there. There's a lot of younger people there. It's just, it seems completely normal. And the people at meetings are usually way more normal, put together, on top of it, seeming people than anyone else I know in the world. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I think it's a place to be.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's great. I'm so glad you had such a positive experience.
Hmm.
Very cool. Okay, and then the other thing, okay, so you mentioned missing days at work, and it was like some of the worst days to miss. It would be like, uh, or maybe I should just let you explain what did you mean by like the worst days to miss, like important days?
Not necessarily, but just days that really stick out in my mind. For example, my neighbor across the street, every Halloween has a really big Halloween party, a really big party at her house. And a couple years ago, we went, and Halloween is usually like on a weekday, and this was, and we stayed way too late. I drank way too much. So the next day, I didn't get my kids up for school. I didn't go into work myself. I didn't even call my kids in sick, which, as a teacher, if my kids are out of school, I'm calling the office and telling them what's going on.
Right.
Well, I didn't. My sub plans that I sent in were just the worst sub plans ever. I was, not in my right mind when I put them together. So that's just one day in particular that sticks in my
Hmm.
mind. That was just a really horrible day. And, it was, it caused an immense amount of shame. Even
Shame.
though I
Yeah.
laughed about it, I mean, I joked about it, like, yeah, we all played hooky. We partied like rock stars, we played hooky. Well, yeah, that's not very funny. But I think when you're in those situations, you make light of it and you make fun of it.
Sure.
But
Absolutely.
deep down, you feel like, gosh, this is really messed up.
Yeah.
So that's one day in particular that stands out. Um, I can't think of any other days that typically miss much because of a hangover, but that's a day that I will never ever forget as long as I live.
Right. Felt really bad about it. No, I totally get it. And then the other example that you gave was about driving drunk like you felt like you're still buzzed the next morning.
Yeah, yep. And I think that actually happened. I think it was that same Halloween party, but this past year. So it was a year later that I went to the same darn party. I didn't go the last time. It was like 2 years ago, and then the last time, and then this time I missed it. But but yeah, the next day I remember driving on the freeway thinking I probably shouldn't be driving right now.
Mm,
And
yeah.
that was, again, just a really bad place to be, like knowing this has got to stop.
Right. Just feeling that shame and
Yeah,
self-loathing and all
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
That's rough. Okay. And none of these things that you are describing were things that you intended to happen, right?
No. Oh no.
No, of course not. Right. So and have you ever done any of these things when you weren't drinking?
No.
Yeah. So,
No.
yeah. So it's kind of easy to put the cause and effect together.
Exactly. There's no question.
Yeah. I have a friend who used to say that he didn't go to jail every time he drank, but every time he went to jail, he had been drinking.
Yeah, there you go.
I was like, oh, that's a good way to put it.
Interesting way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So, did you do exercise 3?
I did. Yeah.
Okay, so that one is describe the negative consequences and destructive behavior caused by all of the things in exercise 2 you're feeling powerless over, powerless and unmanageable over. So we kind of went through that really, but let me just see if there's anything that we missed. So, how does this affect your daily life? So, when these things are happening and you're coping with that shame, are there things that you've do to self-soothe? I mean, do you, let's see. So like in regards to the kids, I know that at time, listen, I didn't have kids while I was drinking, but it's not uncommon that if you feel bad about something, like you overcompensate. And I've been known to overcompensate, if whatever with the kids, with like, food or buying them things or, I mean, because I'm still human, even though I'm not drinking. But did you find yourself doing things like that to sort of smooth things over with the kids, or?
I don't know if it was like smoothing things over or just more of convenience. Like I would say way more like fast food dinners and, oh, you want McDonald's? Okay. And I don't know if it was more just, it was convenient because I didn't have the energy to put together a decent dinner.
Right.
No. But I never, that's the only thing I guess I can relate to in that regard.
Yeah. Okay. And what about your self-esteem? Do you feel like your self-esteem takes a hit after?
For sure. I mean, it definitely, it affects the self-esteem and also the mood. It just, when I'm drinking, my mood is just dark. It's like negativity putting into the universe coming right back on me. It's a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote that it affects me extremely negatively in all aspects of my health, my self-esteem, and just my general outlook of the entire world. I mean, I know that's kind of dramatic, but I often feel when I'm in that cycle of drinking that I have like a black veil that I'm wearing and it just shrouds everything. And when you're not drinking, it everything is brighter. It's amazing. So yeah, it definitely affects pretty much everything.
Yeah, definitely. So there's some more questions on here. Do you want to just read what you wrote that we may not have covered already?
Sure. I wrote that some of the negative consequences are just that feeling of shame and guilt, worry, anxiety, and depression. Those are all feelings that I experience very frequently when I'm in those cycles when I'm drinking. And when I'm drinking, it's a nightly thing. I'm not the type of person that just drinks on weekends and doesn't drink all week long or drinks every other day. I mean, it's every night when I'm in that cycle. So it impacts every day, every second, pretty much. And when I'm in that cycle, I'm thinking about it all the time. Even when I wake up and I think I'm not going to drink. And then throughout the day, I'm thinking, I'm not going to drink. And then at some point it changes and it's like, maybe I'll drink just tonight, but it's always on my mind. Whereas when I stop and I'm, after I stop for like a week, I stop thinking about it. Like I rarely think about it now. So it's a huge negative impact.
Yeah, it sounds like, they talk about the obsession of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
There's like the allergy of the body, that causes the blackouts, and has that, do you ever experience like when you start drinking, like, just like that feeling of more, like just want more?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I when I'm out, if I do go out, um, frequently I would order 2 drinks at the bar because they can't serve me fast enough and I don't want to run out.
Yeah. Don't want to wait.
No, no. And I was out last summer. I was sober, and I went out to the bar with my husband and my sister up north. And she comes back with 2 drinks, and I'm just like, oh, good Lord, you know.
For you?
No. I was
one for her and one for you.
One for her and another one for her when that one runs out, because she's the same. You know, she's the same. And I could totally relate, and I felt very sorry for her. Like oh yeah, I can definitely see. You know. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to watch.
Yeah.
It's like, they say that people are just mirrors, and it's like you see yourself in her. So if she's coming with it too, it's like, what that feels like to be like desperate waiting for that second drink.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
And it very well could have been me. So
yeah. Oh, that's rough. Let's see so is this affecting your life goals and impeding your spiritual progress?
For sure. Both areas. There are things that I do want to do. Like I want to write a book, and I'm actually would like to develop an educational program, based on a set of lessons that, I teach to kids who have reading disabilities, but none of that is ever going to happen if I'm drinking.
Right.
Also things around the house, getting stuff accomplished and stuff done. When I'm drinking, I'm lucky to be able to function the next day and get the minimum amount done, but I'm working at like 20%. But when you're working at 20 and 30%, you're not getting anything extra done. You're getting the very minimal done. So absolutely, it's affecting goals. Spirituality too.
Yeah.
I can't be in touch with my spirituality and the and the spirituality in the world and God when I'm actively drinking. I don't even think about it. I don't want to think about it. But you know what? When I'm not drinking and I'm sober, it's something that I focus on every day. So it's like black and white.
Yeah, it's very, very alcoholic is the whole black and white thinking. And it's interesting. You mentioned that when you're drinking, the black veil comes between you and the world. And I do have that. I've had that experience too, where when I'm indulging in something that is a distraction, really is what that is, then I do feel cut off as well. You feel cut off from God or whatever, your higher power. And I didn't ask you in the beginning, but tell me a little bit about your concept of your higher power.
I definitely believe in God. But I also, I'm really heavy with belief of the universe. But I think it's all intertwined. I really, honestly, my mom passed away about 5 years ago. And since then, I've just become way more aware of the spiritual world and, putting things out into the universe, getting things back. But I don't feel like in any way, shape, or form that replaces God. God is definitely my higher power.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately, I grew up in the church, and I kind of feel like it all kind of rolls up into the same thing. Like God and the universe, for me, it's the same thing, really. It's one time I was listening to, I think it was a Super Soul Sunday, where I think it was Carolyn Miss was on, and she was talking about her idea of a higher power. And it was that God was law, but it was also personal. Like God set up the laws of the universe. Like you were talking about, whatever you put out comes back to you tenfold. I know that that's a teaching in the Bible, but it's also like a physical law, like gravity, right? It's undeniable. You don't need to believe in it. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not necessarily a theory, and it's like you can actually go out and do that and prove that, right?
Yes, I just read The Secret. I've been reading about law
Yeah.
of attraction and putting
Yeah.
that out and things like that. So I totally agree with you. And I think it all is intertwined and all one in one. And you're right, because they talk about things like that in the Bible.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of the teaching of the Bible is, if you can kind of, I don't know, set aside like what the parts of it that doesn't work. It's really interesting how like the concept of surrender, for instance, there's that story about Abraham in the Bible, and he's asking Abraham to basically sacrifice the thing that he loves most in the world, which is his son, right? And he's like, if you love me, you'll do this. And so just as Abraham was about to sacrifice his son, meaning kill him, God, like, no, I just wanted, to see that if you, and I thought, wow, that is so twisted. But if you, but if you think about things that you put in front of, like your higher purpose or your higher calling or your higher power, for instance, I'll just give you a little example. So, for me, it was about money. And if I could just have enough money, then my life would be perfect. But and I was chasing this one goal, like this one goal. And I was like, if I could just get this one goal, then, but it was about the money, and I was making myself crazy over it. Like I was literally I was working myself to death, and I was making myself crazy over it. And finally I said to God, you know what, if this isn't your will for me, like it's making me sick. And if this isn't your will for me, then you have to take this desire from me. It's like, that's a God job. It's like, you have to align my will with yours, because I don't have that kind of power. If you don't want this for me, you have to take that desire from my heart. And I kid you not, and I meant it with every fiber of my being, I surrendered that business. And it wasn't very much longer after that I landed the job of my dreams and tripled my income.
Oh
But
my
it didn't,
gosh.
I know, but it didn't come. Isn't that crazy? But it didn't come the way I thought it would.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was trying to force this thing to happen.
Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until you surrendered that it came, it came in a totally different form.
It came in a totally different way, but it was that feeling of complete surrender.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was just interesting how, and then it was almost as if God was like, I'm trying to give you this present, but you have to put down this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't give it to you if you're holding on to this other present, or, you know what I mean? It was like this broken ass piece of junk I was holding on to, trying to make it into something. And God's like, please put that down. I have something so much better for you.
That sounds exactly like what happened to Oprah. Did you ever hear the story of how she was cast in The Color Purple? It was like the exact same story, where she was just thinking about it, and she even had an audition, and she's like, I didn't get it, and I knew it was because I was too fat. I was like 220 pounds. And so finally, like she told God, let this go. I just need to let this go. And then at that, like the next day, she got a phone call, and they said, hey, do you want to be in this movie? The same thing.
Isn't that crazy?
It's so crazy. Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know what it is. There's something, and I've been sober a long time, and over the years, over the last 25 years, I've noticed that, whenever I'm hanging on to something and it's the feeling of I'm trying to force something to happen, and it's making me sick. And then I have to go, please, God, you have to change my heart's desire. I don't have that kind of power. And when I really surrender, magical things have happened.
It's amazing. I need to think about that more often. I really do. That's amazing.
Well, and I read somewhere that the prayer that never fails is thy will be done. That is the prayer that never fails. And my mother-in-law gave me, the prayer, praying for the highest and greatest good for all involved. When it's not just me, you know what I mean? It's not about my selfish desires. It's not a sole focus on just me. It's like, what is that? And it's sort of like, I don't know, it like takes the pressure off, or it's like, I don't have, you know what it is? It's like, it takes the self-will out. It's not about self-will, me trying to force something to happen. It's about, you know what, let me just relax and let God do his job.
Just letting go.
Letting go. Yeah. It's a hard place to get to sometimes, when we're afraid that we're not going to get what we want. that we're afraid that we're going to lose something that we have, or we're not going to get something that we're demanding.
Mm-hmm. Or we don't want to lose that thing that we value so much and we have so much stock in.
Right.
But sometimes you just need to let it go.
Yeah. God's trying to give you a better present, but he can't give you something if you're hanging on to your broke ass.
That's right.
Broke down junk. Oh, I love that.
My junk.
I love my junk. Right. Oh, that's so good. All right. So and by the way, I love your goals about writing a book and that educational material. What kind of book do you want to write?
I don't know. I have a nonfiction book that I started that's just, I've got this storyline with these characters in my mind, and it's hard because it's all jumbled, but I have I have some good stuff started. I just have to, it's hard to get motivated to get on it. And I think I'm only sober 70 days. That's not very long. I have not had extended sobriety. I think I still have focusing issues because of the alcohol. I think that, I've heard from other people that you need like 6 months or a year, or sometimes even more than a year for your brain to get right. And I don't think I've given my brain that chance yet. Mm-hmm. Because I haven't been able to sit down and focus. And then I wouldn't mind writing a sobriety book too. I mean, when I went to the doctor and told him everything, and he, had no good information for me, I had found this rehab center that was like 30 minutes away, and he said, no, you don't belong there. There's a lot of drug addicts there. Don't go there. You need to go. We have a program here, and call our social worker. Well, that social worker no longer worked there. And then I got a hold of another social worker who told me, you can't join our program until you've stopped drinking, because they were afraid of seizures.
ODTs or something?
Yeah. So you couldn't join the program unless you had already stopped. So
that is the craziest nonsense I have ever heard.
It was insane. This was back in 2016. It was about this time. 2016. I gotta plug in. I had something called pleural effusion, and one of the things that could cause it, they said, was liver problems. So I got really scared when I saw that. I had my lungs hurt, so I went to the doctor, and they did blood work to see if it could be a lung clot. And they ended up calling me the next day, which was on a Saturday, and said, your blood shows that you could have a clot, so you need to go get an MRI done today. So I went to the ER and I had an MRI done, and it was fine, but they found that my lung had pleural effusion. So I made a follow-up appointment. But in the meantime, I had looked it up, and it said, it could be because of liver problems. Well, I got very scared at this point. This was back in 2016. So when I went out for the follow-up, that's when I told the doctor everything, mentioned rehab, and then that's when he gave me all the information. And after that, that's why I didn't actually stop until 2017.
Wow.
Because I spent that whole time thinking about it, trying to maybe moderate a little bit, but I never lasted more than a day or two. But it wasn't until 2017 where I found the podcast and found the sober groups. And then, it was that door that opened that led me to this, where I'm at today.
Wow. That's one of it causes me so much anxiety and pain. It's like, it's so much frustration that the medical community is so uneducated about alcoholism and drug addiction. I always call it addiction. It's all kind of the same thing.
I think it is all, yeah. But that was one of the things that I'd like to talk about, write a sobriety book and talk about that, because I hear a lot about, people say, well, yeah, we weren't honest with the doctor. Well, you know what? I was completely honest with the doctor, and he was so clueless. And it was such a failure. And how many other people are in my situation to where they're trying to get help, but they really honestly don't know how.
Right. Yeah. And there's still this stigma for alcoholism and addiction that a lot of people in mainstream just aren't talking about it.
Such a stigma, because look at this guy, doctor who looked at me and said, he probably thought to himself, lady, you've got a job, you've got a decent life, you don't go to rehab, you don't belong there with those drug addicts. How ignorant is that?
So ignorant.
So
yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, I highly encourage you to write that memoir. Anna David has a class online. I'll tell you about that later as well. But also the educational materials. That sounds really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be really great if I could. The problem is that short vowel sounds sound very much alike. Short E sounds like eh, short I sounds like I, short A sounds like eh. So
Oh,
I need
yeah.
the kind of program that can pick up on these individual sounds so
Mm-hmm.
that as the kids working through the program, it can correct, their sounds. But the problem is the short vowel sounds are so similar. So that's where I'm stuck at. But
Okay. Oh, is someone there?
no, it was my Alexa.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I'm
maybe you
so
have a note.
sorry.
Did you have, you're all, who is talking to me? Yeah, it's so funny. Like on a podcast, people can't see your face. And I was like, oh, did someone just walk in the room?
I'm so irritated because I told my kids, okay, I'm going downstairs. I have this call, stay upstairs.
Right, right.
Alexa,
And then all of a sudden Alexa's talking to you. That's so funny.
Sorry about
No worries. No worries. I'm actually going to leave that in. Okay, so let's see. Is there anything else that you wrote that we didn't talk about?
Let me see.
Let's see. It says, let's see. It's helpful to be specific if you can about what you are aware of that you want to change, right? As little or as much as you want regarding step 1. The main thing is to not overthink it and to listen to your source with a capital S.
I mean, just maybe, when I think of powerless, I don't, there's a lot of people that seem to have a problem with that. I think of me being powerless over alcohol, and I think of not being able to have just one drink. That to me, that's what that means to me. Is like, I'm powerless over it. If I have a sip, done. That's what I think of. And it's 110% true. I don't feel like this makes me feel powerless. I feel powerful because I have that choice. But once I take away that choice and I take that drink, I lose any and all power. I'm totally powerless after that. So it's not a place that I want to be in. I think that helps keep me on track and keep me on path.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, other than that, I don't think that there's anything that we already didn't talk about.
Awesome. Well, that was, I feel like those were really, I love the specific examples that you gave, and, and really it's about, recognizing that the drinking is, causing things like guilt and shame. Right. And it feels like life is hard enough as it is, to try to maintain your self-esteem. Right. So
it is. Yes.
Yeah. Drinking is, exacerbating. I feel like our life, we operate from a place of self-esteem. So anything that we do, which is harming our self-esteem, is actually, it's like a predictor of your level of happiness, or your level of success, what you tolerate from others. It all comes down to where you're coming from is at a self-esteem level. So we need to keep that as high as possible. So
yeah, and I can relate to everything you just said perfectly. I mean, it's exactly true.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Well, listen, girl, you are on your path to improving your self-esteem. I just feel so hopeful for you. The projects that you have in front of you, and
I felt like, I feel like this time truly, like I just am done, absolutely done. And I know that, I have to take that cautiously, and it still has to be like daily work, but I don't ever want to go back.
Well, that's the thing. That's the gift of desperation. Like if you just don't, you're desperate to never go back. I mean, I got sober off of that, so that's legit.
Yeah.
All things are possible from there. Yep. Well, listen, great work on your step 1. And it's so funny. I have sponsored probably 6 or 7 teachers I don't know. The teachers like me, teachers and lawyers. I've had a bunch of lawyers too. I don't know what that is.
Or do teachers just like alcohol too much?
I don't know. There's lots of listen, everybody likes booze, don't they? It's like I'm in sales and people are like, oh, people in sales really like to drink. And then you hear somebody that's like in different fields and they're always like, oh yeah, those people I think everybody likes to drink. Yeah. Every industry has their winos or whatever.
Yep. Every single field, even the mom field.
Oh my God. Yeah. Seriously. Ooh.
All right.
Listen, so you have step 2, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So when you're done with step 2, just ping me and we'll schedule the next session.
Okay.
All right. Good. All right. You have a nice evening. Thank you so much.
You too. All right. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye. One last thing before you go, if you enjoyed the podcast today, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review. And if you'd like to make a donation to the podcast and help me keep the lights on, you can do so by visiting odatchat.com. There's a donation button or membership button on the right-hand side. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us.